All right, we should be good to go.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's 8:01. I'd like to call the Planning and Development Committee to order on this Thursday, July 23rd. Andrew, you roll, please. Thank you.
Supervisor Heiss,
Here.
Supervisor Abarca,
Here.
Supervisor Harwick.
Here.
Supervisor Belke,
Present.
and Chair Sutherland.
Here, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda?
Move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any changes on the agenda?
Yes, we have item 5C, Land Division 35. We'll strike that one. It was denied at the town level at this point.
Thank you. No other changes?
No, thank you.
I have a motion and a second for adopting the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have an agenda. A motion and a second, please, to approve the minutes of July 9th, 2026.
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second. Of a motion and a second, any changes, corrections, additions to the minutes? Hearing none. For the approval of the minutes, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? We have the minutes. Thank you, Mary. Citizen participation, communications, and announcements. Do we have any citizens on Zoom that would like to speak?
I don't see any hands. Everybody's muted.
Okay, hearing none. Do we have any citizens, residents in the room that would like to speak? Please. No, thanks.
Would
State
you
your,
like me to?
Yeah,
sure.
wherever you're comfortable.
State your name and address and
Mark Spreitzer, City of Beloit resident, and I represent most of Rock County in the state senate. Also by way of disclosure, Supervisor Gorman is my husband. I think most of you are aware of that, but in case anyone in the public is not, and I am here to speak in favor of the three resolutions that are on the agenda authored by Supervisor Gorman. As a state senator, I've been very involved in legislation relating to data centers, and specifically, I am a co-sponsor of a bipartisan bill from this last session that would ban local officials from signing NDAs related to data centers. I think that is a good policy. It's one I intend to continue to advocate for when the legislature comes back into session next January, and I think it would be wise for the county to adopt a policy similar to that for its staff. I've been involved in economic development activities, first as a Beloit City Councilor back from 2011 to 2015. And then for 12 years as a legislator, I've had a chance to work with James and other economic development professionals on a variety of projects, including ones that have had some public opposition. I have never seen anything like the public opposition to data centers. I am not here asking you to take a position on data centers. That is something that is outside of the county's purview, really. You don't have county zoning, you don't have approval or denial on these projects. But what you do have is the ability to advocate for transparency. And when I, as a state senator, found out, and when the people that I represent found out about a massive proposed data center in the town of Beloit, the town of Turtle, not from public officials, not even from the developer, but from a reporter unearthing something on the DNR website and realizing that that project had been going on behind the scenes for over a year and that officials had signed NDAs related to that and not told the public, that leaves a really sour taste in people's mouths. And whether that project would or wouldn't have had any chance of being popular, and I'm not saying it would have, but when people find out that way and they find out that their elected officials or staff who report to those elected officials knew about it and hid it, that's a bad way to start interacting with the public on something. And I am frankly worried that data centers risk jeopardizing our traditional economic development tools, whether it is things our staff does, whether it is things like TIF and TID incentives, and hurting other traditional projects simply because of how deeply unpopular data centers are. And so in your limited role as the county that can't approve or reject these projects, I think the one thing you can do is what these resolutions seek to do, which is to say, Let's not be part of hiding these projects from the public. Let's not be part of promoting these projects and playing matchmaker and encouraging local officials to move them forward. Let's just step back and say, we don't really have a role here. It's going to ultimately be up to the town governments or the city governments where these are located to approve or deny them. And I think it's important that you take that step because frankly, at the state, we haven't done our job. We are not in session right now. We won't be till January. And so there's about a next 6-month gap where I wish we could do something at the state level. I wish we weren't putting this all on you locally. But frankly, you're the only ones that can act in the short term. And I think the sooner you do, the less headache you're all going to have and the more the public is going to trust that their elected officials and the economic development staff who do critical work are not doing something that they hate behind their backs. And I think that will put us all in a better position going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room? Please come up, state your name and your address and the town or village, city that you're from. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lori Huntoon. I live at 3909 East County Road J in the town of La Prairie, Beloit, Wisconsin. I am a professional geologist licensed by the state of Wisconsin, and I have over 30 years of experience in development, industry, and regulatory compliance. I'm here to support the resolutions. I think that we really need some time. We need to provide a chance for some of the lawsuits that are going on, a lot of the science, a lot of the regulatory issues that are being fast-tracked. I'm not against data centers, but I'm against data centers in the wrong place. I'm for responsible development. And so transparency is really important for the community as well as for the officials. There's a lot of information that's not being shared. We're being told there's a project, but we don't know what size, we don't know where the water's coming from. My concern is our resources. My focus has been groundwater almost my whole career. And there's just we have a lot of questions about where water is going to come from for each of these projects and where the wastewater is going to go to. And the wastewater plants aren't set up for the 30 to 50% glycol that are in closed loop systems, things like that. So I really just am up here just to ask that you will support those resolutions and I guess demonstrate that it's a concern and that there's, responsibility that we need to have on these projects and maybe give us some time to be able to look into actually the details. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens or residents in the room? Please come up. State your name, address, and city or village you're from. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Lou Pierre. I live on West Street in Beloit, Wisconsin, so I'm in the township there. I'm here to talk a little bit about the non-disclosure agreements as well. I guess I kind of put it under, in my mind anyway, how do we find the best deal or help? In this case, we don't have the authority to make major decisions due to the laws of the land that's given to the local municipalities, the towns and cities and so on. But I think we can help with that a little bit. Again, it all comes to my mind, how do you find the best deal? And unfortunately, as the senator said, and the other thing I wanted to say is when things are done a little bit in secret, I don't know if that's a good word to use, but you don't quite know everything that's going on. That leaves things under question, doesn't it? You just kind of automatically do that. And I know James back there, he's been involved, and as the senator said, he's worked with him as well in some of those talks, where the public doesn't always know everything that's going on at first. And it comes under best business practices in that competitive nature of how it is today. You really need to start out in that way because otherwise your competition is going to find out everything you're laying out there and you lose your advantage. I guess we could say the Senate is the same way right now, or the legislature. It comes to mind to me, why are they dragging their feet? Why didn't they make a decision and help us out with this instead of saying, well, I wish it wasn't that way, but it's in your lap. Well, that's okay. That's the way it is, right? And I'm sure they had good reasons. But you understand what I'm saying? When somebody says something like that, or the legislature acts in that way, then you say, well, why did they do that? Are they being influenced? So the main idea there is everybody is suspecting everybody of being a little underhanded or finding some way to find an advantage. And I'd like to see this committee and the county help those who are gonna make those decisions for what's done with the land. To make good decisions. How can we communicate? And I know James and people like him are in charge of those contracts or developing them. Will eventually do that. Once they get things set up, then they will disclose to the public what it is. But in the meantime, unfortunately, the way the media is today, social media and groups, the way they form their opinions and gather together and try to have their influence. We have to go all through all these things. In fact, when I went to the Towns Association banquet there last week, there was a lady that talked about how people, and I forget what town it was, but it was one of the towns here in the county. The board members were actually being threatened because of things that were being considered. I don't know the details of that, but she's came from there and said that they were really in fear. Well, is a person gonna run for that office again after that? They might question it. But I know I'm getting off a little bit, but it's all under how do we find the best deal? How do we put on our best face and do the right thing and communicate correctly with each other to encourage good decisions for the citizens that we represent. On the waiting thing, I have a problem with Supervisor Gorman's resolution where he talks about in lines 19 to 21, waiting 18 months. I don't think that's reasonable. In my mind, if you're gonna study something and you have experts that you can invite in and they can advise you, I don't think it should take 18 months. And as the senator said, by then, long before that, they'll be back in session. And the other thing about waiting is, I do think it's good to wait. Because what if the Wisconsin legislature decides something direct opposite of what we would decide here or the towns? And then does everything have to be done? I don't know the details of that, but it seems like there is good factors in waiting to gather information and also see what the legislature eventually is gonna do. In my mind, I wanted you guys to consider and gals to consider also, can we really treat a group like data centers different than other businesses? You know, can we make exceptions? Do they have to reveal or, you know, whatever is decided? Can we make that different for them than other businesses? And Corp Council, I'm sure would have an answer to that somewhere along the line. So I think it's kind of a balance where we protect trade secrets to make good negotiations, but we also somewhere along the line, as soon as possible, I suppose, to reveal what's actually seriously being considered to the public. And maybe that'll be enough transparency to kind of put a lid on things. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizens, residents in the room that would like to speak? Okay, I have some comments that have been wrote in that I'll pick, and you know. The first one is from Supervisor Ron Woodman, Rock County Supervisor. A lot of attention has been given to the planning and zoning department recently. Confidentiality is important. Developers need to be able to gather information. Landowners and potential landowners also need to do the same. They need time to look at projects to see if it fits their purpose and possible conditional use. A recent example I would use is a young couple asked county planning and zoning about a property they were interested in. During the discussion, they talked about their pie in the sky business plan. They needed to know what conditional use permits they might require. However, the business plan got forwarded to the town, unfortunately, before they could put a realistic plan together and go before the town zoning board. It was put on the town agenda for discussion. This is why it's important for any development to have time to mature. Why our employees must remain confidential until a plan is officially brought forward. The next comment I'll read is from Joseph Stottleman. Dear committee members, I'm Joe Stottleman, president of Angus Young Architects and Engineers, resident of Beloit, member of the Forward Janesville Board of Directors Executive Committee, and member of the Rock County Passenger Rail Committee and the Rock County Comprehensive Plan and Farmland Preservation Committee. My comments today are regarding the 5 resolutions on July 23rd agenda. I want to voice my support of resolution agenda items 7B and 7E, which promote a methodical and controlled approach to any development policy and project proposed in our county. These resolutions allow staff to continue to appropriately perform their duties and shows prospective businesses are desired to welcome all opportunities. I also ask you not to consider moving forward to resolution 7C, 7D, 7F. These resolutions limit the ability of county staff to properly perform their work and sends the wrong message that Rock County is not open to discussing and promoting new ideas and developments in our community. The county, as well as any town and municipality entity, already have very established public hearing and approval processes in place to ensure that public interest and opinion is heard throughout the development of a project. There is no need to impose additional limitations or requirements at the county level that do not change these steps for any project, not just data centers, but all projects are bound by these established processes. In addition, these resolutions, if approved, do begin to set a negative precedent for the scrutiny of emerging industries for our region, send the wrong message about our county. Thank you. The next one I'll read is from Andy Witt, Caldwell Banker, Rock County. Dear Andrew Baker, thank you for the opportunity to provide public comment regarding the proposed resolutions related to non-disclosure agreements and economic development. As a commercial real estate broker with more than 22 years of experience working in Rock County, I've had the opportunity to work with businesses of all sizes, considering investments in our community. Throughout my career, one thing has remained consistent. Confidentiality is often an essential part of the site selection process. For that reason, I support allowing county staff to continue using non-disclosure agreements when appropriate. NDAs are a standard business practice and often provide companies with the confidence to explore opportunities before sensitive business information becomes public. In my experience, requiring confidentiality during the early stages of a project does not diminish transparency. It simply allows legitimate business discussions to occur before a proposal is ready for public review. I also support maintaining a strong and proactive economic development program. I believe Rock County should continue engaging with hyperscale data center developers, as well as any other business or end user interested in locating or expanding within the county. Economic development is most successful when staff have the flexibility to work with all industries and evaluate opportunities on their merits rather than excluding certain sectors before the process even begins. Ultimately, every major development proposal will still be subject to public review and approval process is required by local governments. Those are the appropriate forums for evaluating a project's impacts, weighing community concerns, and making informed decisions. Restricting staff from engaging with prospective employers before those conversations even begin risk placing Rock County at a competitive disadvantage. Our region competes every day with communities across Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest for investment, jobs, and tax base. I believe Rock County should remain open to those opportunities while continuing to conduct a thorough and transparent public review once projects are formally proposed. Thank you for your consideration and for your continued service to Rock County. This is the last one I have to read. This is from John Beckford. Rock County. Dear members of Rock County Planning and Development Committee. I write to you today as a longtime advocate of economic development in Rock County and as the retired Chief Executive Officer of Forward Janesville to urge your careful consideration of the proposal to severely restrict the use of non-disclosure agreements in the conduct of economic development activities on behalf of Rock County. First, let us take a moment to recognize what this community has accomplished. Since the devastating recession of 2008, a period that hit Rock County with particular severity, Rock County has demonstrated remarkable resilience and determination. Over the years that followed, economic development professionals working in partnership with county leaders succeeded in attracting a diverse range of new industries to our region, generating thousands of jobs and millions of dollars in new tax base. Equally important, our existing industrial companies have expanded significantly, deepening their investment in Rock County and reaffirming their confidence in our workforce and our community. These achievements did not happen by accident. They were a result of skilled, strategic, and often painstaking work by economic development professionals who understand how to build relationships with corporate decision makers and site selectors. That work, however, depends on trust, and trust requires discretion, excuse me. When a company begins exploring a potential expansion or relocation, it does so with the expectation that its intentions will remain confidential. Premature disclosure can jeopardize a project entirely. It can alert competitors, drive up land and labor costs, or cause a company to withdraw from consideration altogether. Economic development professionals routinely operate under non-disclosure agreements precisely because our corporate partners require it as a condition of engagement. Without the ability to enter into an NDA, Rock County's economic development team risks being excluded from the table at the very moment it matters most. I want to be clear and emphatic on the point that I believe is central to any concerns the board may have. The use of a non-disclosure agreement does not in any way circumvent the authority of the Rock County Board of Supervisors. Any incentive package, negotiated arrangement, or formal commitment made with an economic development client would still require full review and approval by this board before it takes effect. An NDA governs the confidentiality of preliminary discussions and exploratory negotiations. It does not bind the county to any financial obligation or policy decision. The board retains complete authority over any and all final agreements. Transparency and democratic accountability remain fully intact. Communities across Wisconsin and the Midwest have long recognized this reality and have put similar policies in place. Rock County competes for investment against regions that are well organized, well resourced, and fully equipped to engage with corporate prospects on confidential terms. We should not allow procedural gaps to become a competitive disadvantage. The companies we are trying to attract expect professionalism, and a clear NDA policy signals that Rock County is a serious and sophisticated partner. I respectfully urge the Rock County Board Staff Committee and Planning and Development Committee to authorize the appropriate use of non-disclosure agreements in economic development. This is not a retreat from openness in government. It is a recognition that effective economic development requires a level of professional discretion that ultimately serves every resident of this county. The jobs created, the tax base expanded, and the families supported as a result speak for themselves. Thank you for your continued service of Rock County and your thoughtful consideration on this important issue.
And we do have one iPhone with their hand raised if we want to recognize them.
Sure. iPhone, would you like to identify yourself, your name, your address, city and village? Thank you.
Hi, this is Sheila Williams. I got a new phone, so sorry I haven't updated my name on
It's unmuted.
Zoom.
We aren't able to hear you if you're speaking.
Um, Okay, can you hear me now?
And we got a chat. Yeah, I've got no indication that there's a problem with our audio. Oh, people online can hear her. Oh,
Okay, can you hear me now?
She's able to hear. I'm not able to hear on my.
try again.
Can you hear me now?
Can you please try again? I don't know what to do. Can you try speaking again, please? I think we must be having technical difficulty with our speaker. Yeah, I guess there's not,
I can hear her.
it's not working. No,
Okay.
it's not gonna.
Mr. Baker,
Now we can hear you.
this is Supervisor Tillman. I could hear Sheila Williams perfectly.
And we can hear you, so thank you for speaking. So I don't know what's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sheila, would you like to try again?
Can you hear me now?
Here we go. Thank you. We broke through.
It's probably my fault.
No, I think it was on our end, but thank you for being patient.
Sheila Williams, Janesville, Wisconsin. I just wanted to say that I think it's a big mistake on the committee and the county to group data centers similar to other industries. And I believe currently Rock County does not have any data centers. And I would hope one of the supervisors on the committee would confirm that for me. But this is an unprecedented area for Rock County, and to proceed in haste would be a huge mistake for everyone involved. And I also wanted to thank everyone who spoke today. And I'm not either for or against data centers, but I do think the process does need to be slowed down and ironed out. And as part of the public, with the economic development, I think the disappointment is coming that other economic development opportunities that would create high-paying jobs and be less polluting to Rock County or to the towns are being overlooked. And it does seem like the county is is wanting data centers over other industries and traditional industries and commercial development. So I think that is a big issue with the public. And I guess I'm disappointed to see that our economic development company isn't working harder to bring more of those industries to our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else in the room that would like to speak? Any other citizens, residents? I think we're done on, oh, I'm sorry. Please come up and say your name and address and town or village, city that you're from. Thank you.
My name is Jenny Fugel. I live in Beloit, 1300 Strong Avenue in the city. I want to speak to, ideally, there would be action at the state level because there's so much activity with the data centers right now. There really needs to be some overarching guidelines. That is not possible right now. And second to that would be action at the county level because there are a ton of these tiny little municipalities and they are not equipped to deal with handling these types of large developments. They don't know how to make sure that they're keeping their communities safe. And that's why we need the county to keep us safe. Because our townships, they're just our neighbors, they're picking from a small pool of people who are doing their best and they're great, but they're not great at this type of development, and we need the county to protect us. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room? Any citizen, resident that would like to speak? We have everybody on Zoom that has spoke.
Yes, thank you. No other hands are raised.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Number 5 on the agenda. Code enforcement, Steve.
Good morning, everyone. This is regarding Land Division 2026-026. This is a proposed one lot minor land division located in the town of Lima. Lot 1 is to be 8.05 acres and will be rezoned to A3. This will leave the parent parcel with 56.46 acres. The purpose of this land division is to create a separate buildable lot. So pretty straightforward. Recommendations. The following conditions are subject to approval to one lot minor land division in the town of Lima. Zoning for the proposed lot should be verified by the town, and then proposed lot 1 is to be rezoned to A3. And then I list our for the town as they're rezoning the property out of their A1 zoning district to A3, that their farmland preservation program that comes into play there, where they have to check off boxes that make sure the rezoning of the land of a farmland preservation zoning district is warranted. Other than that, it's just our standard notes, pretty straightforward. Any questions?
Any questions from committee? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve land division 2026-26.
We have a motion and a second to approve land division 2026-26. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Approved. Land division 2260-34.
This is a proposed one lot minor land division located in town of Lima again. Proposed lot 1 is to be 3.19 acres and is to be rezoned to A3. The purpose of this land division is to separate the existing farm residence and farm buildings from the productive ag land. So yeah, right there, pretty straightforward. Recommendations, similar to the last one, zoning should be, the proposed zoning should be verified by the town, and proposed lot 1 is to be rezoned to A3. And again, this is taking land out of their A1 farmland preservation plan zoning district. Where are we here? I'm also noting that there is scroll up. I can do it. Sure. Just noting, go next picture there. Just noting there that there's a pad for an old grain bin or silo pad there, that in case if they want to put another tower on there or bin, that would not comply with zoning requirements. But not an issue for going forward with this. Number 2, just noting that this land division removed 2 of 3 access points from East County Highway N. N is a access controlled highway, but so everyone still has access there. And then just standard notes after that.
Any questions from committee? I have one on the
Mhm.
silo pad, or
Yep.
is that reasoning because it's partially off the site?
Correct, yep, yeah. A3 side yard setbacks are, I think I have them down here, there are 10 feet for any kind of accessory structures. So they have to be at least 10 feet off that lot line. If they put it right on, they're encroaching, obviously. So yeah, just noting that in case someone in the future wants to do something with that, but it's perfectly fine for the pad to be there as it is.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve land division 2026.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. For the approval of land division 226034. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion granted. Now, we took C off.
Yep.
So we're done with code enforcement. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Community development, upgrading or updating rather, I'm sorry, regarding Riverside Development Affordable Housing Project, City of Beloit.
Yeah, I don't have anything in the packet because I didn't know where we would be at with this project. As of today, but some positive news, for the newer committee members. In 2020, for the 2024 budget, the county board, approved setting aside $4.5 million from the ARPA funds for affordable housing. And this particular project the Riverside Development Project is a project at the old, or the former YMCA site in Beloit. There the 46 new affordable housing units. So like the county authorized $989,000 to go towards this around $16 to $17 million total cost for the project. So I'm happy to report that, like I say, our contracts had to be approved before the end of 2024. We got those done on New Year's Eve at 8 o'clock on Randy and myself getting those completed right at literally at midnight almost. So happy to report that if they have not closed, they're going to be closing shortly. We've already transferred the funds to the project. They're going to use the funds to acquire the property and then some of the front end design and planning and those types of things. So that's a really big win. Again, 46 units, complete new construction. And just for reference purposes, like I said, the project is between 16 and 17 million. So when you talk about affordable housing, it's intended to be affordable to live in. It's not any cheaper to build. So that's, I mean, the overall average cost between these projects was over $300,000 per unit. So that's just something, that's why these little bit of a boost from the ARPA funds really helped to get this project and the other ones, or this project over the threshold. So very exciting. And I'll send the email today to you all, but there is going to be a groundbreaking on Wednesday, the 5th at 1 p.m.
August.
Yeah, what did I say?
You just said the 5th.
The 5th, yes, August 5th.
Just
5th.
clarifying.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mhm. And Supervisor Abarca was involved with the project in some form or fashion in the city.
Yeah, I was on the plan commission when it passed through the commission and heard a lot of constituent concerns, voted in favor of it, and now I'm happy it's finally going through.
Yeah. Yeah, not with, I mean, with these types of projects, there's a stack of funding sources, so there's a lot of things to go through. So that's said, it's been years in the making, so it's really exciting.
Thank you for your efforts.
What was their concern? So-
The same as many affordable housing developments, but not wanting to build in the neighborhood, some entrance concerns from which roads and, just the general affordable housing development concerns that you tend to hear.
And there is a chance, there is room for a phase 2 at some point on the property.
Right,
It's exciting.
thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Corporate planning, discussion of data center related resolutions on today's agenda. I'm gonna read a memorandum to kind of explain or lay out how we're going to handle these 5 resolutions today, this morning. Since there are 5 separate but related proposed resolutions. This will help keep our conversations and deliberations focused. And as you read them, you have maybe or not in front, there are certain themes that connect these resolutions, but not all these themes are necessarily complementary. 3 of the 5 resolutions were submitted by Supervisor Gorman and 2 were submitted by me. So the first one, limiting county staff from entering into non-disclosure agreements relating to hyperscale data centers. This resolution creates a countywide ban applicable to all county staff with regards to entering into any type or form of a non-disclosure agreement for any proposed Rock County hyperscale data center project. It also defines what constitutes a hyperscale data center. Number 2, policy requiring a regular public report on the status of non-disclosure agreements. This resolution creates a public reporting requirement for county staff that have entered any existing and or new hyperscale data center non-disclosure agreements. Twice per year, these reports will be presented to the county board staff and the planning and development committees. These reports will also be distributed to the full board of supervisors. Although specific content and or information must be included in these reports, certain items may be excluded. Number 3, authorizing the use of non-disclosure confidentiality agreements. This resolution builds on Resolution 2026-50, which did not advance from the county board staff and P&D committees this past spring. And it also combines themes from the above resolutions that I just read. It directs the county administrator and corporation counsel to develop a policy to authorize the use of these agreements. This authorization or policy would apply to all county staff, citizen committee appointments, volunteers, and the elected board of supervisors. The development of this policy has a 120-day time clock, which begins ticking immediately following the adoption by the board of supervisors. If or when this policy is not approved, county staff are eligible, permitted, and or authorized to enter into non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements. Interim policy governing staff engagement with hyperscale data center development proposals. This resolution directs the county administrator to create a policy that would ban or prohibit any county employee from working on any hyperscale data center project for at least an 18-month period. This ban effectively covers any form of engagement, communication, marketing, project management, etc. activities. It also defines what constitutes a hyperscale data center. Although unclear, the implication during the 18-month pause period is that county staff would be allowed to gather applicable hyperscale data center facts and information. The last resolution is affirming the County of Rock's Economic Development Program. This resolution describes how and why the county has an economic development program, where the program or services have traditionally been housed, planning and economic and community development department, and it also explains the characteristics of an effective and sustainable program. Additionally, it offers a high-level summary of the positive impacts of the data center industry from the national to the local level. It also references the negative consequences of putting one industry sector against another. It also reaffirms the purpose of the county's economic development program and re-acknowledges the county administrator's authority to determine county economic development staffing, engagement, resources, etc. So we have corporate counsel here also. If there's any questions from committee on the resolutions we're going to bring forward, you can ask them now before we get started. Hearing none.
Hold on.
I do have a question. So can we specifically say like, oh, hyperscale data centers are gonna have this specific like restriction, yeah. Like, call it on it.
So it depends on, as with many things, with land use issues, the devil is in the details, right? About what the county does or doesn't do. I think as you've heard extensively from Andrew Baker and maybe for me at different times, maybe indirectly, right? The county does not have the power to engage in general zoning authority, make land use decisions, right? Of particular parcels with regard to their general zoning authority. What it can do is it can direct internally its own resource decisions. And that's a policy decision on behalf of the board, right? So the choice to allow or prohibit the use of NDAs in general or specific uses, that's certainly within the policy prerogative of the board. The choice to devote economic development resources to particular land uses, that's a policy choice of the county board. The county board has those powers to articulate to staff what its policy priorities are, certainly. And there's not any issue with that. Talk a little bit maybe about process, because you have these 5 resolutions, right? Certainly some of the ideas incumbent in particularly, Supervisor Gorman's resolutions as compared to Supervisor Sutherland's resolutions are at least in tension, right? And it would be challenging for staff if all 5 of them passed the county board. It would be very challenging for staff to know how to deal with that, right? So there are some, maybe not binary decisions, but there's some tension that will need to be resolved, right, between those resolutions. The easiest way to do that would be to approve some of them and not approve others. At the committee level, what you are doing is you are actually making a report to the county board on your recommendation, right? So you by having a motion in a second and then a vote, the vote is actually on whether to recommend adoption to the county board. That's the formal action that you're taking. Legally, you could recommend all 5 resolutions to the county board at this stage. That's challenging, right? Because we generally think of the committee as where the work is done, where we try to figure out what the policy should be that is being recommended to the county board. So if you were to recommend all 5 resolutions to the board floor, having 29 supervisors deal with that at the board would be very, very challenging. It could happen. It's within your authority to do it, but it presents some challenges, right? And so if you want to resolve that, one of the ways to do it is to, again, to approve some of the resolutions, but not others. And so that's, I think, why Supervisor Sutherland is having this preliminary discussion about all 5. So you have a chance to kind of think through that and decide for yourselves what it is you'd like to do today.
I kind of wanted to ask James a question. He's not gonna kill me. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How, the reporting the NDAs 2 times per year, what would that look like for you? How imposing would that be? How would that impose on development? You have many years of this, so please tell me.
So it wouldn't be too dissimilar to any other type of general reporting requirements we have, with the exception of the context of what this would be. But in terms of just the sheer mechanics, it'd be like any other report that we provide, but certainly, again, the context and the information contained within there would be certainly different than other reports. And that would be subject to the policy decision on behalf of the board, how they want to articulate and shape that up.
Do you think it would prohibit businesses from wanting to develop here, in general businesses, or just the data centers?
So in general, it would create a different playing field, because it would be a different requirement at a different level on our marketplace compared to other competing locations. So it would create a different standard of engagement that not necessarily everybody is playing in the same field with the same rules and regulations and boundaries and guardrails, so on and so forth. So that would be different. That would require certainly a fair amount of education and information on the front end, and how that's going to be received is subject to their interpretation. I have my own personal professional opinions on how that would be, but certainly it would create a very different playing field for us.
And when you sign the NDAs, because I don't know anything about them, typically, if you sign them, how long does it take before people are aware of what's going on? It depends probably on how fast the business develops, I'm assuming, based on general knowledge.
Yeah, so all different shapes and sizes, and so that means the timing can be all different. Sometimes these projects can move very rapidly. Other times they could have an extended period of due diligence where it could be years while they're doing their research. There could be things happening in the marketplace where they hit the pause button. We've had several examples, at least during my career here, where things have went away and they've come back just because of opportunities and perhaps changes in state legislation or right, a lot of variables come into play. And so it's really hard to tell what the general or average timeline would be, because depending on the size of the project, depending on whether the project is financed by, you know, a publicly traded company or privately held company, perhaps private equity, all those different decisions have different variables that come into play. So it's really hard to kind of put a ballpark average around what that timing would be on the life cycle of those NDAs. And certainly I'll defer to corp counsel here, but you know, there are reporting mechanisms already associated in most of those NDAs. They have those articulated in there, and generally there's a time period associated with that. And then there's certain things that have to be done before you release and then things after you release it.
Yeah, I mean, I will say a lot of NDAs, particularly with large public companies that, or just large companies that are used to developing in conjunction with municipal or government entities, there is often a notice sort of provision that exempts out a public records request, right? So we get a public records request, we're required to provide notice to the company with whom we have signed an NDA with, and then they get a chance to object. You know, that's a pretty common mechanism in these NDAs. It's not in every one, but it is, you know, it is something that happens. It's why, despite the fact that in the current set of projects, despite the fact that there are NDAs in existence, we've been able to release, you know, lots of public records with regard to all of these projects, is because we've gone through the notice period and there's been no objection, and so we've released. So,
And me as Joe civilian can ask for those at any time, as long as you follow your process?
right, so they are subject to regular public records analysis, right? So the NDA in and of itself does not create an exemption to the Public Records Act.
Right.
What it
Okay.
does do is creates a contractual relationship in which if we breach the NDA and cause damages, then potentially the beneficiary of the NDA could have a cause of action against us, right? So that's one piece of it. But the public records piece of it, what the courts have made very clear is that an NDA may be sort of evidence of a public interest in keeping something confidential, in that, you know, you've heard, I think, lots of stories from staff or from the community about the appropriate use of NDAs when developing projects and sort of having them in their nascent period be able to collect information, consolidate information, like create a concrete set of circumstances for that business development. And there may be a public interest in keeping that process confidential so as to continue to encourage that development and perhaps, you know, land the big fish, right? And I'm not talking about data centers, I'm
Right.
just talking about in general business development, right?
Mhm.
And so an NDA can be consistent with that public purpose. And under that set of circumstances, you could have a exemption to the public records law because the public interest in confidentiality is it outweighs the strong public interest in disclosure. So anytime we're doing public records analysis about whether to release or not release, we have to go through that balancing test and, you know, determine whether the public interest favors confidentiality or whether the public interest favors disclosure. And it is not the interests of the county or James or me or Andrew. It is the public interest in maintaining that confidentiality. If the public interest is not sufficiently high in maintaining that confidentiality, then we don't meet it and we have to disclose those records. And, you know, from the recent set of public records requests, you know, I can kind of give you some examples in that, you know, we've gotten public records requests which have spanned, you know, the past few years back. And despite the fact that there may have been NDAs signed with project development that occurred 2-3 years ago, and those projects didn't go anywhere, and those NDAs technically like are still in place, there's no public interest in keeping those records confidential. The projects are dead. And so there's no basis to withhold the disclosure of those records, even though there may be an NDA which covers the scope of those records.
And I have one more question.
Sure.
So is it legal for us, our county, to, for lack of a word, discriminate? Like you would only make deals with solar farms or versus data centers? Is it legal to do that?
So generally, yes, right? So when we we are allowed to direct our resources in ways which are consistent with the policy objective of the board. You have to be a little careful that they're conduct-based and not like content-based. And that's a hard distinction to parse out. But for instance, just a really simple kind of illustrative example, right? Would be like the siting of a new nonprofit incubator, right? And we could say, no, we're not interested in business incubation. We don't really want to provide discounted space to 501c3s. They don't add any value to the economy. Or we could say, yes, we do. We love it, right? That's content neutral. What you couldn't do is you couldn't say, well, I really want a center that's advocates for pro-life positions, right? And I'm not going to approve the center that advocates for pro-choice decisions, right? That's content-based. So that becomes a little hard because that's speech-based, and now we're into the First Amendment land. So as long as it's about conduct, which development of a business in the physical infrastructure and implementation of physical infrastructure, that's conduct. It's not content, it's not speech. So that's kind of the distinction divides down. So far, none of the things that have been proposed have sort of raised my spidey senses about content restrictions and First Amendment issues. So.
Thanks. Sorry, guys. Had a lot of questions.
If I could just add one little footnote.
Yeah.
I think it's relevant because not everyone has the same opportunity to engage and kind of have the same level of familiarity with NDAs. We don't operate on an island. Okay, these are fairly common, and one of our largest partners in the economic development world, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, signs NDAs, and we sign on to their NDAs as an additional partner. So just to thread the needle a little bit in terms of some of the other comments that were made with the public comment period, these aren't foreign. Our largest partners use them, and so they're fairly frequent in the economic development world.
I do have a follow-up to one of your questions. So if there is a strong NDA where there's a project being still considered and going through, and someone does a public records request on that NDA, is there any information you give them, or just say we're not allowed to disclose any sort of information?
It is completely context dependent. And so again, when
would you be able to give any of this information to a strong NDA?
Which is this information?
All parties that signed the agreement, the date it was signed, and a description of the purpose.
So I can't categorically say yes, and I can't categorically say no, right? Because it really depends on the project. Frequently, at the point at which time we're getting a public records request for a project that's covered by an NDA, there's a substantial amount of information already in the public domain about the project. So to the extent that any of the information or records, because really public records requests only covers records, it doesn't cover just the dissemination of information, right? So there has to be a record that has the information that's requested. So to the extent that any of that information or any of the information in the second paragraph here, or the lines 33 to 37 in this resolution, would already be in existence, we would in fact disclose that, because there would be no public interest in non-disclosure doesn't exist anymore. The information is already out there, right? Depending on what the project was, where it was in its life cycle, what the benefits of the project to the public were, the attitude of the developer in terms of their propensity to continue to engage in the project development, if the information were to come out, I mean, those would all be factors that we would, James and I would be sitting in a room, probably on the phone with some people, talking about all of those things to try and figure out what is the harm to the public interest if this information is disclosed.
Any further questions from committee before we get started?
Sorry, Supervisor Sutherland. I just want to, one thing about the board rules that I just want to make sure everybody is playing on the same playing field, especially because we have quite a few new members on this committee. So the way that the board rules work is that resolutions that are recommended for approval must be put on the next county board meeting that is practicable. So it's not, it doesn't have to be the next county board meeting. It just has to be fairly reasonably quickly after the recommendation for approval. These sets of resolutions are, I think, all going to go to also County Board Staff Committee as well. So they will go to 2 committees. So that, as soon as practicable, doesn't apply until the second committee deals with the resolutions, which will be August 10th, I believe. If any of the 5 resolutions are recommended for approval by either committee, they will go to the full board, right? So it would have to be a no vote on a resolution, both here and at County Board Staff Committee, to not go to the county board. If a resolution comes before you and there is no first or second, and there is no vote on whether to recommend for adoption or not, then that resolution then becomes eligible for a minority protection rule that upon the expiration of, I think it's 60 days, and no action by a committee, 5 supervisors can petition to have that resolution brought before the county board. So let me just kind of play that out, right? Say one of these resolutions, nobody is interested in even discussing, nobody makes a first or a second here. Nobody makes a first or a second at County Board Staff Committee, so it's never considered by either committee. Then after 60 days expires, if 5 supervisors petition the clerk, it goes on the next available county board meeting, right? It's there to protect the minority from being silenced by, an individual committee chair or something like that. So if you want to dispose of them, even if you maybe are not going to vote in favor of whatever resolution, but you want to deal with it and sort of have the committee make a statement about it, then in a second or a motion is appropriate, even if you're going to vote no at the end of the day.
So that provision only applies if there's no action taken,
Correct.
not if it's denied by both committees.
Correct.
So if, say, I motion and nobody else even seconds or votes on it,
Just get-
it can be petitioned by supervisor?
It can be, so long if there is no action. So that actually means not only what we mean by action actually is the report issue. So the report is either to recommend adoption or to not recommend adoption.
So let's go to a vote.
Right. So if there's a first and a second, that motion at the committee level is always to recommend adoption. Like that's the motion you're making by default. If you vote in favor, you are making a vote to recommend it for adoption. If you vote against, you are making a vote against recommending for adoption. So we would consider 3 no's votes a report not to adopt at the county board.
I have a question then.
The
So,
more you open.
you said a motion and a second would be to vote affirmative.
Correct.
Well, can we make a motion and a second to bring a resolution to the board or to the committee for discussion, then make a motion
To vote.
So the motion that you make, like when you read off the title of the resolution, you ask, is there a motion? That motion by rule is always for recommending adoption.
Okay.
But it doesn't constrain your ability to vote no,
Okay. got it.
right? You can vote no still on, yeah. It would be impractical in smaller committees like this for that to be the case. It's a little different at the board level when you're in an assembly of 29 and technically under Robert's rules, if you're the motion maker, the expectation is that you will be voting yes, and you're not really supposed to vote no under Robert's Rules of Order. It's different at the committee when we have much fewer number of people, and just procedurally, anyone can make the motion, anyone can make the second, anyone can vote yes or no on the resolution.
Gotcha.
Well, before we get started, any more questions from committee?
The seminar in parliamentary procedure.
Right. That's true.
Thank you. Counselor. Okay, well, we're gonna start off with resolution number 2026-95. I have a motion and a second.
Which one?
That will be authorizing the use of non-disclosure and confidentiality agreement.
Could we say I move?
Yes,
I move to discuss this resolution.
second. I have a motion and a second. Okay. This resolution is for authorizing the use of non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements.
Go ahead.
NDAs are confidentiality agreements. They're common, they're ethical, legal business development and relationship building instruments. They're routinely deployed to protect competitive interests from future negotiating positions of engaged parties during the respective due diligence period. These agreements do not represent legally binding commitments, contacts, developments, investments, but they do establish a foundational baseline where parties can determine if there's an interest in advancing the relationship. Prematurely releasing competitive market information and sensitive data may cause direct as well as unintended short and long-term financial impacts to said parties. Our social and traditional media platforms create an extremely fluid communicational environment where narratives are continually subject to manipulation and repackaging, thereby complicating the dissemination of objective and contemporary data, information, and research. A proposed resolution that was 2026-50 earlier this year was dealt with here and at staff, and it was neither advanced to either of the county board staff or the planning and development committees. So unpopular and as misunderstood the nature of NDAs and confidential agreements are, they require thoughtful, practical, and strategic response from the public sector, as accountability and transparency expectations for all levels of government are continuously trending upward. So this policy must be presented for consideration to the Board of Supervisors within 120 days of the adoption of this resolution. Failure by the Board of Supervisors to take action on or approve a policy to authorize the use of non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements does not negate the ability of county staff to enter into said agreements.
So you have first question.
Well, I was just gonna ask. So are they not allowed to enter NDA agreements now? And if we do approve this, what does that change if we are allowed to enter NDA agreements?
So we don't have any, excuse me, employment practices policy, formalized policy around it, right? So in those circumstances, it's really delegated to the county administrator and to department heads about how to engage with those kinds of things. So as I think you've heard James say, like he relatively routinely, I would say, signs NDAs as he's going through project development, right? And so that is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that in terms of those uses and his conduct. So.
And it could be something as simple as going on a visit, to view another facility. You might be asked to sign an NDA before you can walk in the door. It's nothing more than don't share what you see.
Yeah.
It could be something as simple as that. So that's where we're trying to be really careful about how we organize, the kind of the scope and the breadth of what NDAs could contain.
That's a good example. So, sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
This is essentially what you all are doing today? Is this?
Yeah, so
In present.
In the present
so right now, I guess I would say it's left to staff and supervisors to use their best discretion about using NDAs consistent with what they think the policy prerogative of the county board is, right? And that's completely appropriate. We do that all the time in all kinds of areas, right? Obviously, the board can't supervise the day-to-day administration of the county, and it's just not feasible, it's not possible. And so we have to use our professional discretion all the time to make those decisions. That's what we're doing. There isn't an official policy that says that that's okay. This would impose the requirement of having there be like an official policy that's developed that the board will have a chance to review, comment on, edit, make changes to if it so chooses to do.
Okay.
So this limits your ability on NDAs from what you currently are able to do?
No.
Or
So really what it,
Guardrails on it?
really what it does is it directs us to craft a policy. I would say the most likely thing to happen is we will craft an explicit policy that's consistent with our current behavior. And then the board will have a chance to weigh in on that policy because it will be reviewed by the board.
Which could include the reporting piece that was in part of another resolution, those different things. So that would be, to phrase it another way, that would be the only change, for lack of a better term, that this resolution essentially presents.
You guys are really getting us thinking.
Thought I smelled something burning.
Right.
I guess the one other thing I say it would do, right, is it would provide clarity to staff about what the appropriate way to determine when to sign and use an NDA would be. Right now, it is left up to the discretion of the individual staff member and or their supervision to make those determinations. Here, we would be able, like, somebody calls me and asks me, well, can I sign this NDA? I would pull out the policy and I'd say, well, is your NDA consistent with the policy adopted by the county board? They would look at it and they would go, yes, it is. I said, well, then you can. Right now, I would have to say, well, what's the NDA for? What do you think? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I don't know. What's the public reaction going to be? What's the board going to think? What's the county administrator going to think? And I'm trying to sort of guess, to some extent about what all of those factors would say. This would provide a black and white, tool basically to evaluate whether that was true or whether that was a good idea or not.
And you earlier mentioned that if we pass all these resolutions, it could be a little tricky for staff. If we say pass this resolution, would it also be tricky for you passing the first resolution by Supervisor Gorman of banning NDAs for hyperscale data centers?
Which one?
2026-94. Wait, is that the one? Yeah.
Or do you mean this one, the one that's got the NDAs on it? 97.
96 probably.
96 is the prohibition on the signing of NDAs with relation to hyperscale data centers. So this resolution in particular is limited to hyperscale data centers.
So it could fit in the possible, like the future policy that would come out of this one.
You could do both. What gets tricky is that, you have a resolution articulating a specific policy, and then you have a resolution directing staff to come up with a policy. Could we harmonize it? We could, and I'm not saying that can't happen. It definitely could. And if that's the prerogative of the board, we will try and do the best we can, and we'll bring back a policy that we think is in alignment with that. So.
When they make the if we pass the first one here about you guys writing the policy, that could be when it came back to the board, we could say we want to add something.
Yeah, so definitely anytime anything comes to the board, especially anything with what we would call like legislative language, so specific policy or specific ordinance language, the board is at its discretion to amend it in whatever way it sees fit. So if you pass the first Sutherland resolution, and you choose not to pass the first and second or either one of the Gorman NDA resolutions, it doesn't mean that you're foreclosed out of putting that language into the policy when the policy comes back for the board to review.
You can still make it. Yeah. And that's with any resolution for the full board. Any further questions from committee? I have a motion and a second to authorize the use of non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Resolution granted unanimous. Supervisor Gorman. Take one of these.
I was gonna say, which one are we doing?
So I think, sorry, 7C.
Go ahead. Yeah.
7.
Yes.
What, maybe 6 or?
7.
Which resolution is that?
This would be, 7C for the agenda number.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to start out by thanking the chair and the committee for allowing me to speak, and also for that I thought very fair and accurate summary of my resolution. So I thought I really appreciate kind of the neutrality and kind of the accuracy of which it framed. When I initially introduced my first version of an NDA resolution back in March, it started a robust public discussion. I really listened and tried to take seriously the feedback that I received from this committee, from the staff committee. And that feedback was really to make sure that it was limited to hyperscale data centers specifically, because I did not want to have any unintended consequences of impinging or making difficult any other form of economic development in this county. I've said before, I want to hang a placard outside Rock County that says all businesses are welcome except data centers. And that's what I want these resolutions to do. So, because I know NDAs are a normal part of business operations, and I wanted our county staff to be able to use them. And hearing that feedback, I decided to make it very specifically to hyperscale data centers. And as Senator Spritzer said earlier, I think this policy is probably likely within the next year to become a uniform policy across state law. So I think any kind of small competitive disadvantage we might lose now is just temporary. And I do think, well, there probably is a real kind of small cost to a little bit of competitiveness. I do think we need to weigh that against the value of transparency and kind of our duty to the people who elected us. And even if there is a small cost, I think it's worth it. And I'm open to any questions at this time.
Any questions from committee?
I guess my question is, for lines 33 through 38, where did that information come from? $50 million over a 5-year period, including construction costs, all the equipment, all the technology is pretty small.
Mhm.
So that's not a hyperscale data center. That is a regional co-location center that could be used by Mercy, it could be used by Blaine Farm and Fleet, any of those at that size.
Yep, that's
So that's kind of, I would have issue with that, just because 50 million in over 5 years is a very small facility. And it is not hyperscale at all, and it could be one of those local ones that our regional businesses would use. So that would be.
Let me back up here, Fish. I'm sorry.
Oh,
We forgot to do a motion to bring.
After the summary, yes.
Discussion. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's my.
You guys can continue. Right.
I'm excited to listen.
Well, we're listening.
May I have a motion and a second to discuss Supervisor Gorman's resolution?
So
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, now.
thank you. That's a really good question. And that's why this definition includes, it's not just the 50 million to qualify. Basically, you need it's the square footage, it's the and also specifically, so just to read the definition fully, a hyperscale data center is defined as one or more facilities that house computing and networking equipment and meet or is likely to meet any of the following qualifications. An average annual electricity demand, the building footprint, and then a combined total cost construction. So it does primarily have to be a facility that,
No, I get that. Just for $50 million, you can't get 50 megawatts of power. That's gonna be 15 to 40. I'm just saying this definition doesn't really go along with kind of current construction trends and the costs. So that would be my own thing. The fact that it says likely to meet any of the qualifications rather than and or, you know what I mean? There's some things in there that
I mean, I'd be open to an amendment. I believe I took that number from a definition in state law, in the proposed state law. But if you'd like to amend it, if you'd like to amend it to a larger number, I think that'd be fine.
Can you do that?
I
think we can. There has to be a motion, right? So it's that it doesn't come out like there is. So this is a good, actually, sort of another parliamentary thing. Deliberation discussion is not a motion, right? So there is often a back and forth, flushing out of information, flushing out of policy positions or consensus, and all that is totally fine at the committee level. We don't have the formalized kind of I rise and speak and give a speech and then sit down, and that, you know, that's for the board, right? And so in the back and forth that Supervisor Gorman and Supervisor Harvick were just, you know, engaging in, totally fine, totally appropriate, but it's not a motion. So if somebody formally wants to make a motion to amend, they actually have to say, I make a motion to amend, yada, 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 whatever it might be. So.
Second, and then discussion.
And you're saying it needs to be a lot bigger.
I think that doesn't match up with reality for a hyperscale compared to just a regional
So we don't limit the smaller.
Right,
Is
right.
what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
What I'm
just to
hearing.
make sure we're not cutting out our local and regional businesses that may want to put up their own private data center for themselves that is easily gonna cost over 50 million. And it would not be hyperscale.
And that's a good point to make, is that there's a question from the comments, are there data centers in Rock County right now? Absolutely.
Yeah.
They just don't meet this definition, and that's, the definition is important.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we have a data center at IT, I mean, technically,
Yeah,
yep, so.
yeah. So that's what the definition does matter.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
And this is for a corporate council, if we just struck that third item entirely, the combined total cost, just deleted that item 3. Would it still be a enforceable practical resolution?
Yeah, you would have to move this is a matter of technical mechanics, you'd have to move the or to between the first bulleted and the second bulleted, but that's fine, you could do that. And then you would just strike off the last clause. Again, I think as Supervisor Harvard pointed out, right now it says any, so if the facility meets one of the 3 qualifications, then that's totally fine, or it would trigger the provision of the resolution. And so by deleting just one of the qualifications, you're just exempting out, a facility that would be worth $50 million over 60 months, but wouldn't have met either 1 or 2. And so.
And I got another question. Is your definition including all 3 together to define a data center, or is only 1 or 2 of these have to apply at one?
It's any of the one, as long as it's a facility that houses computing networking equipment.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if we strike the any out of there, if it would make it easier to.
And I very specifically on this tried to make sure that I did some research into kind of the electricity demand and the square footage and kind of some of the largest Rock County businesses, because I wanted this to specifically kind of not accidentally include any of those. But understanding that the thing I actually had least personal knowledge about, and Supervisor Harwick is much more of an expert on, is the 50 million cost. So I can't make an amendment because I'm a member of this committee, but if anyone wanted to, I think it wouldn't change the intent and purpose of my resolution at all.
But the rest of it is accurate? Oh,
It's it depends on a lot of different things.
could he make it bigger?
I mean, I just don't, 50 megawatts, that's on the very, very low end, and probably it's not even really considered hyperscale anymore.
Jeez.
And the 50 megawatts, I mean, what if this is a location that has both manufacturing as well as its own on-site data center, and the total project uses 50 megawatts? You know what I mean? Like you've got a large, let's say another hospital wants to come in, they want to build their own IT section on there, but because the whole hospital, and everything else is using 50 megawatts.
Yep. And I want to make it clear, it's not that this resolution would ban that facility from being constructed in any way. It just meant that our economic development staff.
No, I'm just
signed
trying to really
NDAs
get a
related to
handle
it.
on,
So
make sure
they can still totally build that. We don't have any ability to stop these from being built. It's just about whether our economic development staff sign an NDA or not.
And they don't need an NDA to come here. Correct?
No. Any further questions from committee? Okay, hearing none, I have a motion and a second for limiting county staff from entering into non-disclosure agreements relating to hyperscale data centers. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. 3-2. Resolution.
But this will still go to staff then. Right.
Goes to staff.
And can you revamp it before then too? Or no? Just ask.
No,
the question
so I mean, it's a
properly.
good question, right? So the resolutions, and actually something I didn't remember, the resolutions have to be submitted to the clerk in their final form. And we've run into this before with sometimes resolutions getting to the clerk and there being things that need to be changed, and then we can't change them, they have to be resubmitted to the clerk, which triggers a new resolution, right?
Okay.
That being said, resolutions are considered sequentially by the committees. So for instance, if this committee were to offer an amendment to any of the resolutions it's considering, that resolution goes to staff committee as amended.
Okay.
So the amended
Yeah.
version is what staff committee takes up.
Okay.
Right.
So then county board.
So as the example, if there was gonna be consideration to change the definition, that would be included when it went to staff committee. And they could do what they want, change it again, but,
They can,
right,
before they go forward.
right, it wouldn't come back to us, and that's the sequential part of it.
Philip just can't go and change it
Correct.
between now and staff,
Yeah.
but he
Right,
encouraged. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, may I have a motion and a second for a policy requiring a regular public report on the status of non-disclosure agreements?
Motion made.
So good.
I have a motion and a second for a policy requiring a regular public report on the status of non-disclosure agreements. Supervisor Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Same, I won't read it, but this was something that when we had our initial discussion back in April, I heard various members of this committee and the staff committee kind of put forward a thing that we shouldn't be regulating how we do non-disclosure agreements without knowing what non-disclosure agreements were in and how we use them. So I thought that it was wanted to have kind of a step of increased public transparency, a regular report so people would kind of know what NDAs we were involved in, but also I wanted to make sure that trade secrets were protected, that we didn't put any business developments at risk besides data centers. So I really tried to make flexibility by having it be twice a year instead of at a specific time to give staff flexibility around producing the report. And again, I just think this, even if it does give us a very small competitive disadvantage, that it is worth it for transparency. And we, because of all the open records requests we have been getting and the fact that any of these NDAs can often be requested and just given to the public, we have a situation where things that the county are doing are being taken out of context and it's and causing confusion a lot of the times. And I think if the county was able to kind of proactively summarize and put out what NDAs we're signing and for what general purpose, that would really build public trust. So that's why I introduced this resolution.
Questions from committee?
Could this also be rolled into the policy that we're gonna create possibly for the non-disclosure?
Yes.
Yeah, the NDAs, could that be rolled into that whole over governing policy of
Right.
NDAs?
Yeah, it could. Again, you know, I think, I just want to be clear about kind of what, you know, and I will say neither, I have not had any explicit conversations with the county administrator about developing this policy. I've not really discussed it in a particular way with Andrew or with James and the details of what will be or won't be included. My general sense is that we will craft a policy that represents the status quo, right? Because we don't really have any policy, or at least not yet, we don't really have any policy directives. You know, if this resolution were to pass, then we would have a policy directive to say, oh, you better include this in the drafted policy because this resolution passed the county board. But right now we don't have that. So we would probably draft something that looked like the status quo, but then that would come back to the board for its review. And if at that time the board thinks that this is a good idea, it's certainly to amend the policy to include the reporting requirement. If there's some other reporting requirement that you know, isn't this, that's something else, that something Billy thinks it's a good idea, it could be that, right? So, yeah.
Thank you. I have a question concerning the time that NDA is in force. And if that timeline is a year, how are we making this public by annual disclosure and still keeping it non-disclosure agreement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, and maybe, I don't know if James wants to speak to this as well, because he has a lot more practical experience with the practical effects of interacting with businesses and the NDAs and those kinds of things. But I think what you're getting at, Supervisor Sutherland, is right. If we're in the middle of project development and we've signed an NDA with a company, the company may not necessarily be interested in having their name be issued in a report during the term at which that development is going on, right?
Right.
Certainly that's understandable. You know,
Some of those projects are a year or two.
Right.
And we're talking disclosing this twice a year.
Right. You know, all of the comments about transparency and informing the public about the ongoing business of government are completely valid and legitimate. I think one of the things that hasn't been talked about very much, though, is that oftentimes businesses aren't using these NDAs to prevent the public from getting information. They're using them to prevent other businesses from getting that information, right? It's not necessarily they're not trying to hide things in terms of rushing a project to completion. They know that there are going to be local approvals for projects before there's a shovel put in the ground, and they're going to have to give information to local communities before they can complete the development. A lot of the times what they're trying to do is to make sure that it's very, very clear to staff that staff are not to talk to their competitors about the business development that's going on. And I'm not saying, again, the board can do this. And if it thinks that the transparency benefits outweigh those negatives, that's a completely valid policy position, and the board should do that. But I think understanding that there will be a chilling effect on the businesses for whom that is true and don't want their name to be known by their competitors about where they're going and what they're doing will be true as well. So,
and that would get out, obviously, to the competitors, making it public. Thank you.
Right, question?
Sure.
Thank you. So at any time, any competitor of a business could make an open records request to us at any point and say, have you signed any NDAs with my competitor? And we'd have to produce those as open records, right?
Yeah, it would need to be phrased a little differently than that, but yes, absolutely. Anyone can make a public records request asking for the NDAs that the county has signed at any moment in time. But the reality is that there are 72 counties in Wisconsin. There are thousands of municipalities, thousands of economic development agencies. Businesses don't usually go around carpet bombing those entities with public records requests. Usually they're doing them in a targeted way. And we do get lots of public records requests for commercial data. So we get lots of public records requests for like all of the contracts we've signed, all of the commercial transactions that we've engaged in. We get public records requests for information about our employees, their salaries, their positions. These are commercial requests from entities that are collecting this data and reselling it in the market to, whatever businesses might need or want to gain a competitive advantage by knowing all of this information. So that is certainly, that happens. It is a legitimate use of the Public Records Act. And all of that's true.
Any further questions from committee?
Yeah. So on this, you want 2 times per year. Would you be interested in, and I don't know if this is even a possibility, if when that time is up, whenever the non-disclosure is up, like, I don't know if you sign them for 6 months, a year, or whatever, and then you make a report just to show that they were done, not necessarily underneath this timeline that I almost said Foreman has said, would it be possible to do that where it's like, okay, this is, it's a moot point.
Yeah.
And we just provide a report of, here's the NDAs we signed, they're all done, per se, lack of a word. Could we do that?
So, I mean, I will say, is it technically possible? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we could do it. I would defer to James about the practical realities of having to do that, since he deals with that mostly.
This is coming from a person who does not sign NDAs. Just asking.
Okay, so, this question, and obviously rewinding the clock a little bit to how we started the discussion. Having this type of requirement, creates a different playing field, first and foremost, okay? So in the absence of clear and consistent guidance and or state law, each location, not only in this state, but obviously in our competitor states, are gonna operate a different way. And so if we're out ahead of the pack on this particular topic, this automatically puts us at a disadvantage, and more importantly, creates a different operating environment where we have to engage differently than our competitors do. And so that would be viewed very differently from the businesses and investors that we deal with on these projects each and every time. And so what will happen is, to use Corp Counsel's phrase, it'll have a chilling effect on that side of the equation, for sure. And so if in
Even when
fact,
it's closed, even if it's so
so
Donald.
active versus closed, right?
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's the active side.
Yeah. Oh,
If
sorry.
it's closed, okay, and if effective the NDA is already moved at this point because the
Right.
project is dead, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word. As long as the information is high level and not specific,
Right,
I don't necessarily think there'll be egregious harm with that, but the details matter, right? So, as long as there can be general things without specifics after the fact.
Right.
That creates probably a comfort level that is easy enough to describe on the front end, but it does again create a different expectation and a different relationship, but if the reporting requirements are benign versus real granular,
right.
that I think that could be managed.
Benign
Again, on
could-
after effect.
Could give us information like GoAx is looking at coming here, you know, whatever, we could learn a lot, something from that, maybe, that's what I was thinking.
Sure,
Even if they don't come,
right.
we could learn something from it.
And not every project signs an NDA or has
Right.
an NDA requirement associated
Right.
with it. But certainly there are, different standards of engagement that are out there.
Right.
And this would create a different standard of engagement for us compared to our current competitors right now.
As it's written right now.
As it's written right now, it'd be very different.
And
very
my
different.
closed theory is a different.
Correct,
Yeah, okay,
correct.
just clarifying, sure it's not the proper language, but. all right.
There are some practical sort of about what does it mean to be closed versus not closed, right? So not every NDA has an explicit term of years, right? Says like this
Oh,
applies
doesn't.
for 2 years. It might apply, you know, ongoing to the information that we gain in the course of developing that project, even if the project kind of falls apart, depending on what it is. So there are some just like details in, it would take some effort, I think, from James and I to try and I'm not sure how we would suss this out in the language of the policy. I think we would just try to have to do our best to interpret what the county board was looking for and then try and facilitate giving that sort of, what does it mean to be closed as a project kind of.
But that's why you guys are the experts, we would certainly yield that to you, I wouldn't claim to know any of that.
Mhm.
In any fashion.
Yeah, so back to the discussion and kind of definition of what close means, as I kind of alluded to in my previous commentary. Some of these projects, you know, could be effectively on life support for the better part of 2 years and then they come back.
Okay,
It happens frequently.
oh, okay,
So not everything that starts at a date certain always ends at a date.
that's the black and
certain.
white in me, yes.
Correct.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
very gray, playing the gray.
Very gray, all right. What do you think?
I think that between now and staff committee, I'd like to meet with Mr. Greenland, Mr. Robertson, and talk about potential amendments that would I think get it where you're going.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in my layman terms.
Any further questions from committee?
So if you're planning to make some changes, can we change the motion to just table it to a future date instead of
Yeah,
just
that's
voting on
such
it?
a good question.
Yeah, I mean, you can postpone. I mean, that's an available action from the committee, right? So if you want to postpone to a date certain, you can do that. It will not prevent county board staff committee from taking it up on August 10th. So your next
Okay.
meeting is August 13th, right? So that would be the next meeting available, right? For this committee to address any of these resolutions. The county board staff will take them up on August 10th. Not to speak for Supervisor Sutherland, but I think there was a hope that maybe we would have some action here. There would be action on the 10th, and then the 13th would be appropriate for county board action for whatever came out of the aftermath of those two meetings, so to speak.
He
Um,
did take the words out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Really like, take action on these. I don't believe in kicking the can down the road. We put in our input, we talk, and it goes to staff. They can do what they want. It also goes to county board, maybe not. Amendments can be made at county board. And
If he makes amendments, this won't be the same.
Yeah.
resolution
When it goes to
then, right?
state.
it goes to staff.
Well, again,
I get-
so the things are considered in sequence. So you have the resolution in front of you right now today. You can change it here if you would like. Once you're done today, no matter what action you take, it will go to county board staff committee on August 10th. And they can take whatever action they want. Whatever the resolution looks like at the end of that meeting will, and if it's recommended for approval by one or both committees, it will go to the county board on August 13th in that form. And then at the county board meeting, it could be amended there. So Supervisor Gorman talks about developing an amendment to the resolution, right? That can happen outside the context of a public meeting. Certainly, I am more than happy to sit and try and do that, but it would need to be offered at a public meeting. Luckily, Supervisor Gorman sits on the county board staff committee, so he will be able to make those amendments at county board staff. So.
Okay.
So that's a key point. It would have to be, a proposed amendment would have to be motioned, from the committee members today.
Any further questions, comments from committee? Hearing none. I have a motion and a second. Requiring a regular public report on the status of non-disclosure agreements. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No.
But rewrite.
Resolution denied unanimous.
Spilled enough to rewrite it. Sorry.
Neither, only about.
It's like, I can't whip it out right now. Meetings.
Okay, the next resolution is. I don't have a number here. What number is
This
it?
is F
E,
90.
We're on E.
7E.
Yep, we're back to RJ.
This one doesn't have a resolution number on it for some reason, but it's agenda item 7E,
70.
the reference.
Affirming the County of Rock's Economic Development Program. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion. Okay.
I have a motion and a second affirming the County of Rock's Economic Development Program. I could read all this, but I think you've all been prepared. I would like to say that this department has really been a good participant in bringing businesses to Rock County, ranging from construction firms, components, equipment manufacturers, and transportation providers actively engaged in the regional and or national data center supply chains. So I guess what I'm saying is this is more about not just, sorry. This is not just about whether we want to develop data centers, but we have a supply chain. And you got to think of how big that is. And they're not just supplying a data center in Rock County. There's other data centers going on that they supply. As I said, you've had time to look at this. I just open it up to questions.
This isn't do anything, right? It's just like.
It's reaffirming our program.
Right.
Yes, exactly.
It's an affirmation is what I said.
Oh. Say it out loud.
Sorry.
It's an affirmation.
Affirmation.
Yep, so yeah, just for a matter of logistics, that's what now therefore be resolved. So like you say, it's not creating policy or making a decision. It's affirming the economic development program.
Any questions from committee?
So since. I don't know, it just seems very symbolic to me, so I'm just trying to figure out the question with it. So if this doesn't do anything, if it passes, would it affect at all the next one we're gonna discuss, where we're, what did it say? The county administrator is directed to instruct county employees to not solicit, recruit, and encourage development of hyperscale data centers. So would this, since it's affirming, would it impact at all this one?
So I think more than anything, I guess what I would say is that these two resolutions probably create some cognitive dissonance for staff. Right, so one is it's right to say that the supervisor settlements resolution doesn't really do anything, like the legal operative language doesn't compel any action. It just says the status quo is great. We've done a great job doing this. Thank you, staff. Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for being great economic development partners. Look at all this great economic development that we've done. We do resolutions like this all the time. They're often advocacy resolutions advocating some kind of policy position to other decision makers, but you know, that's pretty much what both of these decisions are. Supervisor Gorman's resolution has sort of that component of sort of being an advocacy resolution to say we should pause data center development for 18 months, but then it has and prohibit county employees from engaging in data center development for 18 months. So there's an operative piece of that policy that's different, right, than the supervisor settlement resolution. It's hard to reconcile, though, the fact that you're saying, great job doing all this economic development consistent with the Rock County Comprehensive Plan. Oh, but just not in this area, right? So they're not incompatible, like legally speaking, like there isn't like you're not passing contradictory, therefore resolved clauses, but they're a little incompatible in terms of what policy message are you sending to county staff. So you could pass both, that's certainly legally permissible, but it just, I guess that's how
It just doesn't give clear direction, kind of goes into two different ways then.
Yeah.
I mean, can we add like part of this, like a statement I hear, like, we still encourage all other development, because I think a lot of this data center stuff is being conflated with other general economic development, and I don't think that's true. I've been on plan commission for the city of Beloit for 3 years, and I've always been in favor of economic development. I had to take tough choices, listen to a lot of different point of views, but I think it's disingenuous to say that data center development, with all the pushback and all the unique harm it does, and with all the uncertainty in the future with a lot of these companies not making profit, and then there's like a lot of stuff going on at the state level with, as Senator Sprecher said, there's stuff on limiting NDAs at the state level as well. Moratorium is being proposed at the state level too by one of the gubernatorial candidates. I don't think it's wise to just wrap up the data center stuff with general economic development.
I agree, there's this 71 and 72 on the resolution of pitting one industry against another. I feel like we're not pitting them against another.
We're just trying to be cautious.
It's a.
Well, I'm just trying to be cautious on the harm and the future impacts, as well as like, are we still gonna be, what if, since these companies are not profitable, will they be able to continue like these facilities into the future, or will they just close down 5 years in the future and just leave us with brownfield?
Like GM.
Like GM, yeah. I think that's one of the bigger concerns with data centers in specific. I don't think this is just limiting it to other sectors.
Well,
And I mean, I agree with this, I want the private sector to be comfortable and bring more development to the county. I'm not against that, but I don't wanna make it seem like the county doesn't know what it's doing by sending two different messages, where one of them is more symbolic and then the other does have an action to it. There's nothing against this, I just.
well, symbolic is somewhat of a definition of this resolution, but it's also affirming what we do, what we have done, and what we continue to do. The part about pitting data centers against, or other sectors against each other. If I may, can I have James explain maybe some differences of conflict? If we do it, of what could happen. Or Henry? No.
I'll defer to the subject matter expert.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew.
First time I ever directed him to do it.
Right.
Like, no,
So, good discussion, right, all the way back and forth in terms of, kind of high level and the local ground level here. Certainly, one of the nuances that is described in here, and I think it's important to call out, is the supply chain. These companies that already exist in our marketplace, already employ people, already pay taxes. They do a variety of work. One segment of the business in the last 4 to 5 years has been heavily dominated by data center development. So, without naming names of companies, but there are a number of established companies around here that have a fair amount of their business practice right now tied to this particular sector. So if this sector locally is not received well, or nationally or regionally not received well, those companies no longer have that business, which means that they're going to scale back, which means that there's a lot of other collateral damage associated when that happens, right? From both their direct employees as well as their suppliers to their particular companies. So think of this as a puzzle, and these are all puzzle pieces fitting together. So Supervisor Sutherland's kind of statement, this is where the slope gets real slippery, as they say, when you're starting to elevate or demonize or isolate one industry sector versus another. And that can be real problematic because of technology changes, changes in the marketplace, changes in legislation, both at the federal, state, and local levels. And sometimes government turns like a Titanic, right? Not very slow, not very nimble, not very quick, not very nimble rather. So those are just some things to keep in mind, to be aware of, that as you're signaling or communicating what we're open to business for and about, you got to be somewhat strategic and careful on how that message is framed up, and then how you actually implement and support that message. So that way you don't get into a contradictory position where you're saying one thing over here and perhaps saying something differently over here. And so I think that's just a cautionary tale of really focusing energy on either defeating or propping up a particular sector, you know, at the perhaps perils or disadvantage of another one at that point.
and these companies that have, we'll say that the attached data centers are part of growing, and that is the future, obviously, with the AI and all that good stuff.
Right, and so one of the primary things that is kind of stated, but yet not called out explicitly, is this is about infrastructure at the end of the day, right? There are lots of strong opinions about AI and strong opinions about this particular sector, but it is a piece of the digital infrastructure, and it's a piece of an evolving digital infrastructure that has a lot of different implications beyond just sheer economics. There's a national security implication here as well that is not made up, it's real, okay? And obviously the economics need to be balanced, the environmental impact needs to be balanced, not dissimilar to other industries. This just happens to be evolving rather rapidly compared to some other ones.
Right.
But there are localized examples where perhaps when they were first hatched, or ideas that got incubated perhaps weren't as favorable as others. And of course, those have worked through those regulatory processes, and they've gone through some pivots with their particular customer base and products that they make, and now they're on a different trajectory. And I think arguably this sector, much like other sectors, will continue to evolve and advance, and clearly hopefully get better and less impactful on the negative side of the equation that perhaps 20 years ago was more prevalent, right, compared to what they're doing now. So generation 1 to generation 20 looks a lot different in terms of how these things operate.
Similar to what I looked up, Tyson Foods was on that list, Amazon, all the listing of the bad argumentative industries. Sorry.
So I don't know if I had answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
I have one question. So
Go ahead.
if you pass like some of these resolutions, you can always like go back and be like, oh, never mind, like in 5 years, be like, oh, well, the definition of a hyperscale data center has changed, and now we need to like change what the resolutions are. Is that like, we can do that, like as a board, like the board could be like, actually, we don't want this policy so we could like change the policy. like,
You are very much allowed to change your mind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
so.
like a new board comes in, obviously, and it's like, no, we don't.
Well,
And the technology is changing every day. Remember how big computers used to be? And now we have.
No.
Well, they used to be this big. And you couldn't afford them. Now, you know, 2 years old and
On that
on your
note,
phone and.
since we're talking about that, when I was out to IT, they were talking about destroying, well, when we get rid of laptops. Like, this is the size of a hard drive in a laptop, like literally, well, maybe twice this size, to that point.
Mhm. But yeah, the data center technology is changing. And you start putting moratoriums or pauses of 18 months.
Well, that's what I'm
Then-
saying, if we do this now, and they come back in 3 years or 2 years and say, hey, actually, it's not gonna be this disruptive, then we can say, oh, hey, okay, fine, we're gonna take this off the board. And our policy's now changed, but until then, we're not gonna do it.
And I think if it's a growing industry, they're still probably gonna be looking for land in, say, 3 years, 18 months. I don't think this just completely bans the general construction of them either. Just gives us some time to look at the impacts it has, because it is a very rapidly growing industry.
Are we discussing my resolution?
No, yeah, on the point, we're still working on.
This-
Not only confirming. So that's,
Them two are very, not similar, but similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, in general, normally I would step in and be like, this resolution isn't before you. The problem is that these two resolutions are so related to one another
Right.
that it's very difficult to discuss one without discussing the other. So like,
So
it's
that's-
okay. It's okay, yeah, it's okay to be talking about Supervisor Gorman's resolution that will be next to consider. Just understand that when you take a vote, it's on Supervisor Sutherland's resolution, not on Supervisor Gorman's resolution. So just make that very clear.
Yeah, and I can say to the supply chain that there's over 300 union members in this county that are working on pieces that would go to data centers, not necessarily data centers.
How many was that again?
300 union members and their families in this area that are in that supply chain. That's a minimum that if you throw in Teamsters and other things like that, I'm sure it's even higher than that, but
Sure.
just tradespeople that I know.
Not necessarily hyperscale.
Right, they're just building the pieces in the supply chain.
Oh, that contribute
That
to it.
contribute to it, they get shipped off to them, they're
Gotcha.
part of the electrical side, they're
Like,
part of
yeah.
the, exactly.
Mhm.
So that's a lot of jobs in this area, a lot of families that, kind of depend on something that, you hate to demonize and have massive job loss.
That's a huge factor.
Why do you think it is important to differentiate between a data center and a data center? Like, he said the IT here at Rock County has a data center, it's literally a room with cooling units and servers and whatnot, and like, you could have a data center at your house if you have enough servers, like, running, I mean, so it's not like,
Yeah, the definitions work, it's.
yeah, it's
muddy.
not like we're all pumping water out of Rock County.
Right. Right, each hospital has the data center.
Yeah.
The key word here is hyperscale, whereas like the AI takes a lot of energy and it needs these large facilities that are, I think the one in Tumble is like over 200 acres worth. Or,
It's larger than the UW Whitewater campus.
yeah, so this, I think, is a very key word, is the hyperscale where it's.
So they can still be manufacturing these items for data centers, and that's, it, they have been for quite some time, and.
But does that start to include, when some of these are talking about that it has to be reported, county staff can they not engage with supply chain people tied to the data center that have
I was
issues?
getting into.
Yeah, now we're sort of getting a little far afield of whether, yeah, I mean, it's hard to parse out like what becomes germane is the word, right? About, what's germane to this deliberation versus what really is not germane to this deliberation for the next resolution. I mean, it's really up to the chair, so.
I think the main concern from like the community and citizens is the building itself, not the supply chains that build them. I think they just don't want a giant UW Whitewater sized campus in their backyard that's making a lot of noise, taking a lot of power, and I think it's more specific to the buildings that host these servers themselves. rather than the supply lines.
Well, that's, you know, that kind of information is out there, but it's not necessarily factual. So, you know, these data centers around here have been discussed for almost 2 years. So you're thinking 18 months. What are you gonna do? You know, what's the studies gonna do in another 18 months? But anyhow, any more questions from committee on my resolution to affirm County of Rock's Economic Development Program? Hearing none, I have a motion and a second. So all those in favor affirming the County of Rock's Economic Development Program signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
3-2. Resolution passed. Okay, now we get to talk. The Supervisor Gorman.
Yes, so I think we've already kind of started discussing this. This was an 18-month policy to just kind of tell Director Economic Development staff to prioritize every other kind of development except hyperscale data centers, and specifically hyperscale data centers. And the policy as written would automatically go away in 18 months unless we renew it or modify it, sort of thing. So it is temporary by its nature and just kind of allows us a pause and inability to slow these down while we wait for the state and the federal government to kind of wake up and regulate, because it's not even that the data centers right now are poorly regulated by the state and federal government. They're just not regulated at all. They weren't conceived of when regulation was put into effect, and there's really no guardrails in place at the moment. Also, I will just say, under the previous discussion we had about the supply chain and just kind of everything, we are elected by the people, and we do have our authority from the people. And I know my experience running in my last election is that this is an issue that people care about and are opposed to in a way I've never seen people opposed to an issue. This is not the usual NIMBYism. Of people who don't like an economic development because they don't want it in their backyard or because they're really concerned about the environment. People are broadly opposed to this for a variety of different reasons. I would knock on 7 doors in a row and talk to 7 people who had 7 different valid reasons why they didn't want these things. So I do think that we can look right now in Rock County. Greene County just passed a moratorium with their entire board, except I think there was 1 no vote, but they almost unanimously passed the moratorium in Greene County. Our neighbors right over there. Dane County has passed a moratorium. Manitowoc County has passed a moratorium. I know the city of Milton, and one of our colleagues, Ken Smith, is actively working on a city of Milton moratorium to put in place right now. The town chair of the town of Turtle is being recalled right now because of his support of data centers. Like, I think public opinion matters. And I don't think we as elected officials can say 2/3 or more of the people who vote for us are wrong about this. And they have just been, that they don't know. People, if you come to the public comments for these things, if you talk to people, if you're just knocking on doors and going to public events, people are thoughtful in the reasons that they are worried about these. They are not doing this lightly, and they are not being misinformed or manipulated. This is sincere, and they want us to pause. Look at the Janesville City Council elections, and yep. So I would just really think that.
Let me interject something.
Yeah.
Trust and verify. Okay. What you're hearing today, trust and verify. Not everything is the way it seems. That said, we don't have countywide zoning. You're telling the towns and villages, where I heard earlier, they don't have the capabilities. They're like, they can't fight this. They're overwhelmed. That's not true. That's not true at all. I've reached out to all the towns and villages. They've hired big law firms in the area to cross the T's, to dot the I's, as a third party to looking at everything they want to get into. We have no business in this. This isn't in our purview. You're undermining what the towns and villages have in place and have had in place for like 70, 80 years. And it's local rule. They know what they want in their environment. They know what they want in their community. La Prairie doesn't have any zoning for any of this. It's all agriculture. They're not wanting to sell their land. Granted, we have the infrastructure for hyperscale data centers here. But they have the memorandum. I mean, they have the authority. We really don't.
But when it's something that affects the entire county and people in it's not just like if they built it in the town of Turtle, it's not gonna affect me in the city of Janesville at all. So I'm not gonna just think of myself and be like, well, I don't live there, so I shouldn't have any say in what they're doing there because it's not my town. But this is Rock County, we all live here, we all have friends other places, and if they did it there, I would be upset about it being where I live, like.
And I don't think I really heard that the local level, like the townships, villages, cities. I personally haven't really heard that they can't do it alone. I'm just saying, I've been hearing more of like, we gotta do our part. And all I've been hearing from the county level is we can't do anything. We're completely like hands tied behind our back, just let it happen. So I think I agree with you. We should let the municipalities deal with this. The villages, the townships, they can make their own decisions. As Supervisor Gorman has said, there's a lot of moratoriums being proposed. There's been some passed. And if we can't really do much to do anything, then we shouldn't be facilitating the expansion of hyperscale data centers. I think the municipalities can deal that on their own, so I don't see a problem with this resolution on its own. I think we should just let it be at the more local level and just do our part of being hands off.
I will say the intent of this resolution and the other two that were considered is to get us to a place as a county of neutrality and transparency on data centers. Right now, we are not being neutral. We are facilitating them. We are playing matchmaker.
That's not true.
You can look at the communications and the records.
That's not true.
So, I mean, I think it's the context here of what the county does in terms of our role in economic development is very important, right? So, again, we are not land use authorities. We do not decide to site a project. We do not decide that a local community wants a project. Those decisions are left up to the elected leaders in the local communities. What James does is he, I think, as described pretty accurately, he plays matchmaker with businesses and local communities. But the local community always has the most important voice, right? We want the local community to endorse the development that James is attempting to create a match for. And if they don't want it, their elected officials don't want it, then James abandons the project. And I don't mean to speak for James. He's in the room. He can speak for himself, but we've had many conversations. You know, I feel pretty comfortable that what I'm saying, he would say himself. And so, you know, in some ways, by imposing this restriction on staff, you're telling staff to ignore the elected officials who may want development. I totally endorse that there is a public outcry against data centers. Supervisor Gorman may be right that it's 2/3 of constituents in the county. I don't know. I've not seen any information to contradict that. But the reality is that there are elected officials that are in charge of making decisions. And as staff, those are the people that we have to rely upon to articulate what the official positions of the government are in those locations. And that's what James is trying to do, is trying to facilitate the connection of businesses to local officials who say they want this development. There are lots of projects that don't happen because as James reaches out, the local officials say, we don't want it. That's not the kind of development we want. And it doesn't happen. So I want to make sure too that the 18-month pause in policy isn't conflated as a moratorium on a data center being cited. I mean, I hear a lot of rhetoric from some people, like not necessarily in this meeting, but all, you know, kind of across the county about the county taking action to prohibit data centers from being cited in the county. This does not do that, right? All it does is prohibit staff from engaging in those conversations, from bringing their technical expertise to maybe assist a local community to get the best deal it possibly can. It would prevent James from saying, I know this attorney at Boardman and Clark who's worked on all these data center deals and could get you a really great deal, you know, with Google. He can't do that if we pass this resolution. So I just want to make sure the boundaries of what you are voting on are clear. If that's what the board doesn't want, they don't want us touching data center development at all. That is the prerogative of the board. Certainly you can do that. We will follow that policy prerogative. It's not a problem for us to do that, but there are definitely consequences to facilitating communities then that want a data center potentially sited within their midst.
This is a service that we provide to the towns and villages. I'd like to bring James back to the table, please. And the reason why is he's not actively going out and courting, bringing them in, luring them in. He's not doing that. They're coming here because we have the infrastructure. James, would you just kind of lay out how it is that you, or what it is you do with the data centers with the communities?
So Corp Counsel did a real nice job of explaining kind of the role that I play. And so that role always evolves throughout any given project, right? And certain communities require more involvement from my office than others do. And some of that kind of ebbs and flows throughout the life of a project. So at any given point, we'll use a sports analogy just because I think we can all kind of get our arms around that. And we'll use a football analogy. On any given project, I could be the equipment manager or I could be the quarterback. It just depends on what the project is, where the host community might be, the different roles and responsibilities that they have with their staff and elected officials, and how much they want to do internally versus how much they want to farm out to external parties. And sometimes I'm one of the parties that is kind of inside the tent, and other times I might be outside of the tent. And I might be asked to provide, much as Corp Counsel had indicated, recommendations on other service providers that have expertise in a given topic, right? Whether it's fiscal issues or environmental issues, and there's different tangents and granular examples associated with that. But those are often the roles that we end up playing at different points of a given project. This project isn't dissimilar to other ones, just in terms of those roles. What is different though is there's a different level of community interest in these, meaning every step of a particular data center project from start to finish is currently under a different level of heightened review than others. They all go through the same process. This just gets a lot more attention when it goes through the processes. And there may, in certain circumstances, need to be different levels of approvals that are put in there with conditional use permits as an example, or special purpose district, or, right? Lots of different things. So it's kind of hard to say one size fits all in terms of the roles that we play, because they're all different. And since this continues to evolve, my role would continue to evolve at the request of those host communities. They may say, hey, we want you involved in this. We don't need you over here, or, so on and so forth. And we take that direction from them when they provide it.
So they're coming to you. For help, for assistance.
It goes both ways, right? So like a business reaches out to, for Janesville Economic Development staff in general, James may get, a lead. He may take it to a community. Community says, we really want to develop our business park infrastructure to attract this kind of manufacturing, this kind of business. James puts that down, and if there's an inquiry or lead, he may connect those, so it goes both ways. There's not.
I'm not just saying just from the towns and villages. I'm talking from the other end too. They're both coming to James. James isn't out there knocking on doors. Hey.
For this particular sector, we are not knocking on doors. That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement there. We're not out there waving a banner, waving a flag, doing aggressive marketing and outreach.
I think Alliant Energy and other people are doing that for us. And
then property owners, if I may, individual property owners come forward as well. So it's not just local units of government, but individual property owners will come forward and ask for the same level of service and engagement. And then again, that's another role that we play in between those property owners and the host units of government. It happens frequently.
Go ahead.
Okay, and all these skills, basically, when I moved here, I think of like, that's what's developed, all that's been going on here since GM died. I mean, for a while, we thought this world's coming to an end here in Janesville. For those of you who weren't here then, it was a little bit dark, but you've developed, right? A lot of what's going on here, correct?
Correct. I mean, there has been,
It's huge.
it's a team effort, right? So it would be disingenuous to say that one individual or one organization was responsible for everything, but fair statement, the last 16 years specifically.
Yes.
In that
that's
window
the ones I'm referencing.
has been a reset and a revitalization and resurgence of our economy. It's much more diversified
Yes,
than what it was. And it's taken a long time to get there.
develop relationships.
That doesn't happen overnight, and more importantly, it doesn't happen without having alignment. And so that's been real key and critical with both our public and private sectors, all through that we've had alignment moving forward to help advance, you know, the initiatives forward.
I can just add, I very specifically put, what's the line? The word proactively is doing a bit of work. Line 31 from my resolution. I said the county administrator instruct our county employees not to proactively solicit, recruit, market, or encourage the development of hyperscale data centers. So I didn't want to create a situation where someone reached out to James and he had to ignore them and couldn't reply to them or whatever. So that's why I put proactively in there, so he could respond.
Acknowledging, don't do that now.
I
Right.
heard we don't do that now. That's great.
Our resolution earlier was affirming our economic development department of
Yep.
what we do now. So just keep that in mind.
But just to be very clear, this resolution is the only authority that we have as a county board. It's the only thing that we can do that will slow down or even prevent any some data center construction happening in the county. Like I'll be very clear. My intent was writing this was to use the legal powers that we have to try and slow down and stop encouraging data centers and go to point neutrality. And if it has the effect that some town whose elected officials want a data center there that we can't help them, I think that's fine. And I think that's something that my voters and I think a lot of our voters would be very happy with us doing.
I'm hearing, excuse me, I'm hearing a couple things here. You're talking neutrality, you want to slow things down to study this, but in the same breath, you want to stop them.
I mean, I'd like
You
them,
don't want to.
I'd like them personally, I'd like them not be built, but this gets us to a point of neutrality. If I could do a moratorium, I would put one forward and I'd vote for it. And I think probably the majority of people in the county board would vote for it, but I cannot do that.
I just want to
So,
be clear on you.
Yeah, because right now, because we're not neutral, there are potentially more data center developments happening or developments are sped up, and going to neutrality again might have the effect that some developments might not go forward and some developments might slow down, but that's what neutrality looks like.
Chair Sutherland,
Yes, go ahead.
just a point of clarification, just since we're having basically an open discussion.
Yes, it's a workshop.
Yes. So I think just like the definition here that we talked about in the prior resolution, and it's in here, and the words used here. I'm James's supervisor, right?
Right.
So obviously the county administrator oversees all employees, but James reports to me from a hierarchy standpoint. I report to county administrator Light. So from a manager standpoint, I need to make sure that we're very, very clear on what this is directing, not just James, but all staff, right? Because I need to know what I need to do as a manager to say, what is the boundaries of what we're talking about here? And it's helpful in some way that we're not talking hypothetical, right? We have a proposed data center in town of Beloit and town of Turtle, right? That's here, it's in the process. So from a practical standpoint, and everybody admits, James has been working with the towns and the developer and the landowners. With the intent of this resolution, direct James in particular to stop working on that project. That's just my question. You don't have to answer that specifically, but I think at some point, if this proceeds, I need that direction. Because it is my responsibility to oversee what James does or doesn't do, because if he does something that's contrary to what the county board's intention was, then it's on me, not James. So that's important for me.
Thank you.
I do wanna add, if the county board, like you said, it's a service, and if we just don't wanna help out with this specific sector, if the county board chooses to, I think that's all right. I mean, at the last county board meeting, we had a whole presentation on that we can't do anything. There was a lot of supervisors that raised questions on, not to like say anything, like.
I have a presentation saved if we want to go through a little bit.
But there was a lot of supervisors that raised questions on what can we actually do, and I think there is a lot of support for us to just be neutral at the very minimum and just do our part as a county to listen to our constituents, which overwhelmingly says they just at least want a waiting period to see how this develops in the future and how this technology will evolve. And I think yeah, I think they deserve a say.
Is it really neutral though, if you're pointing out on just
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
one
I
industry?
think it's
that's-
important to be neutral. I
Right,
agree
right, but if
110%
you're
with you.
singling one out.
You cannot
that seems
discriminate.
Concept.
That's what I'm not grasping in neutrality here.
Why can't we discriminate? This is
Why
a
can't you
industry
discriminate?
that it doesn't have enough information to help, like, is this gonna help our community or is it gonna hurt it? Which one is it? If it's gonna hurt it more than it's gonna help it, then. why
And I don't
not
think we should be
discriminate against
neutral
it?
on other forms of business development. Like we should be encouraging. We're not neutral on other forms of business development. We're encouraging them. We want them and they should come here. We should keep doing that great work. It's just going to neutral on data centers does not mean that we have to be neutral on everything else.
Not get like a nuclear power plant put in next to my house either. I'm not neutral about that. Like, I'm gonna discriminate against this too. I don't know why we're trying so hard to be neutral about this particular.
Because there's
issue.
probably a lot of businesses that are here that you wouldn't like. And they're here to make money, and that's how economy goes. Whether it's hyper data scale or nuclear powers or Alliant Energy or solar power that leaves a giant mess. I mean, it is all of them. And I agree with you. All of us are gonna have different opinions on that, right? All of us are gonna say, I'll take this. You're gonna say, I'm not taking that. That's how you become neutral about things. You have to represent everyone, not just your belief about hyperdales, data scale, or
Well, I'm not
whatever.
saying it's just me. I'm
No,
saying
no,
our
I'm just
local
giving an
folks have
example
to-
though. Yeah, not just you, sorry. Just, but in general, I think
But when we've had so much community input about this particular issue, and then we're like, oh no, we need to be neutral about this.
that's the
particular
hard
issue.
part of weighing that. I agree.
And
I agree.
not every industry or sector gets this much pushback either, like, there is pushback to like every development, but this is uniquely unpopular. And I think that also weighs in a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I think there was Supervisor Gorman cited that one recent poll showed 71% of people polled disagree with the development. That's a super majority.
Right, but we don't know who those people are, and I bet they're not the people that are working with him. It's not the people getting money. I mean, that's who's developing.
But there's also a lot of the people that live in the areas where it's being developed, which I think matters as much.
You gotta think also, what's the percentage at 70% of the population? Is it 70% of 1,000 people that was polled? Yeah, there's a silent majority here. And, and I'm not advocating, I started the environmental management systems company, committee. I started the commuter rail committee. I'm not pro or anti, but I really believe it's not whether we should build a data center, it's where and how. You gotta get ahead of this. And by not working with it, and this isn't working with it. I don't believe this is working with it at all. I believe this is almost like kicking the can down the road. Because there's all this misinformation. It's been going on, it was up for like a couple years. That's my take on the whole thing. So,
Unless I missed it, I don't think we have a motion to discuss.
Oh,
we did a motion on his either.
I honestly,
I thought we
We
did.
did.
Oh, I think we-
No, we did.
I can put somebody's name down.
I'll
We doesn't,
motion.
I think we're having a discussion.
We did, actually.
I might
We
have,
did.
I might have been fumbling with something else.
Erica.
We worked on
You
it.
seconded it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a general
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Is there a way to have any control over how they're put together or businesses in general?
Okay, You
Sort
start.
of a
Well, yeah, so we can
different-
talk about general, I mean, so going back to the general zoning authority, right? Counties do have the power to have general zoning authority, but it has to be seated by the towns,
Mhm.
right? So if we passed a general, first off, we would spend a lot of time, effort, energy, and money developing a general zoning code for the entire county. Is basically what would happen. I would need another attorney. Andrew would need 2 or 3 more zoning code enforcement employees.
Then 1.5.
And then we would adopt a general zoning code, and then towns could opt in, right? So that's how that would function. So that is not a quick process. That takes 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, maybe 24 months to do that. And you need buy-in from towns. And so you would, whether you got it or not, like town of Beloit, never gonna agree to let us zone.
Look, very,
Right.
never.
Right.
Can the
Some-
town of Beloit restrict a lot of the limitations of what the data center looks like? Can they control like, hey, we don't want you to use fresh water. We wanna, what are the options they have?
The short answer is yes, and
Okay.
generally that will take place throughout what's known as the conditional use permit process. So they will structure a variety of operating requirements
Okay.
from top to bottom on this particular project, as well as any other projects. CUPs are issued all the time through the zoning process, and that gives the local community an additional authority on top of baseline zoning to enforce and impact how those operations must operate within their corporate boundaries. And those are fairly common.
Do you advise that, or is that why they have attorneys?
So it comes, that information and those recommendations can come from a variety of sources. Sometimes they come from me, sometimes they come from other third parties. Generally speaking, they will rely on all that information and come up with a blended set of criteria or recommendations that will be imposed on behalf of that particular business. And so in this case, in particular, if we're gonna use the context of data centers as the example, there is a volume of information nationwide where those operating requirements can be plucked from, customized, tailored, and right-sized for the town of Beloit and Turtle. And so those types of discussions obviously have to happen, and they haven't happened yet because this project isn't at a point where they've actually released any formal proposal. A lot of due diligence right now, but in theory, there's a running list of already proposed conditions that would be applied to this. Those haven't been formally released publicly, they haven't been shared yet, but there's a running list of general things that will have to be addressed and taken care of through the appropriate processes when and if they ever develop. And we don't know if that's gonna develop yet.
If it was developed and they did those agreements with them, is it, and this could be a wrong understanding, that these are companies that just help create them? And then a different company runs them, and are they binding to follow those?
Yeah, so what
things?
we're talking about, so we're not talking about actually agreements, we're talking about legal requirements on the use of the parcel of land. So it is actually, I'll give you a really good example. When I was at Dane County, Adams Outdoor Advertising, the big billboard company, right? They put up an electronic billboard on the side of the belt line. Absolutely violated the zoning code, just complete violation, they just did it anyway. We were able to charge them $1,000 a day for operating that sign. They operated it for 3 years. So yes, we
A great
had a
example, that's what I was
huge-
wondering.
Right,
about, like, how does it
huge,
work? Okay.
huge fine revenue basically out of that. So there are serious civil legal consequences to violating conditional use permits or general zoning ordinances. That, there can be a stop work order that could be issued by the zoning department that says you have to stop operating because you're in violation of the zoning code.
And that's how the local,
$1,000,000 company.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, that company didn't care getting $5,000 a day for 3 years.
Fair
So they're
question.
gonna, if they're only planning on running this data center for 3 years.
And then they
they're
leave.
gonna find it.
So
That's what I was wondering.
there are other remedies as well. So you can get an injunction, you can, there are consequences, including potential jail time for contempt. I mean, this has the full force of the law behind it. So this isn't just,
Yeah, we've all seen how that works, so.
and the local moratoriums that are going into effect in some of the towns, like the one for the city of Milton, are changes to zoning, basically. They just changed the conditional use zoning to basically make it so anything like a hyperscale data center can't be built there for a period of time.
And they can't support it anyways, Milton doesn't have the ability to, it, right?
Hyperscale
Yeah,
data center.
gotcha.
Well, Yeah, and just to your point, and to jump on to what James said, in general, for any zoning, there's likely, every zoning district likely, they have permitted uses, and they have conditional uses. For stuff like this, either industrial or like special purpose, I always go back to the gravel pit scenario, because that's kind of similar in terms of the scope and scale and kind of impact. A conditional use permit is what sets those criteria, in terms of hours of operation, blasting, dust, all those different things that have impact potentially from a gravel pit. However, if a use, if a specific use is specified in the code as of, okay, gravel pits are allowed with a conditional use permit, the town has to consider it. And the conditions of approval have to be legally defensible.
If they reasonably related to the effects of the use.
Yes.
Right.
So you can't say like, oh, you get to operate 1 hour a day and make it completely unviable. The effect of denying the conditional use permit. So that's to get to your point, Supervisor Heiss, that's where the local decision making is really, really tricky. Or any decision making. It can't just be based on the public opinion. It has to be based on their ordinance, and that's what, as Supervisor Gorman was saying, that's why these moratoriums are being put in place, so they can get their zoning ordinances in shape to consider these types of things, so they aren't stuck with no way to really regulate them or have impact without just having to follow the ordinance, because it's really, really tricky to just simply deny something for no reason. You have to have a reason, and that goes back to what's allowed by your zoning ordinance.
And I know just this last Monday, the town of Beloit board voted 4-1 to table and not consider until a later date a initial cost sharing agreement with Panattoni and kind of the next step developing that data center, because of concerns that town supervisors have about kind of the trustworthiness and the business practices of Panattoni, which they have a meeting this afternoon where they're getting answers about that. So it's a thing where like these local communities, I think, are really waking up to how strongly people feel about these and the problems that folks have with them. So just we can get ahead of
questions from committee. Hearing none, I have a motion and a second on interim policy governing staff engagement with hyperscale data center development proposals. All those in favor of this resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Resolution 3-2.
Thank you all so much for your time and patience and letting me be part of this and for letting me be part of this discussion.
There's no kind of a meeting that forced that.
We're still here.
Discussion.
Yeah, okay, moving right along.
Jeez.
We take a 30-minute
Yeah,
recess.
my gosh.
Okay,
No, very good discussion,
Yeah.
for sure.
So it's a very complicated.
finance, any questions, comments here?
Right, so for the new supervisors, I don't know if it's in county board rules or some other policy and procedure, but in the last couple of years, the county board made a decision to require a report of budget to actual figures, both mid-year and year-end. This is the report that was built in our finance enterprise system. So just, we can certainly answer any questions or if you want to look at it later, but so this is budget for 2026, budget to date essentially, and then what the prior year